Hey, trying to get this one done early today. It's 12:45. In the future, when you see this, know that I might not have any clothes on underneath. Yeah. So, I wrote down the two subjects I was going to talk about yesterday that I completely forgot the second I turned the camera on. I mean, literally, I'm going to talk about this, I'm going to talk about this, I'm going to talk about this. Click! What was I going to talk about? It's called a brain fade or brain fog. So the two subjects are, what are you giving up for Lent, and ignoring medical advice and diagnoses. Starting with Lent because it's the fun subject. Every couple of years I get a hair in my craw and I give up something obnoxious for Lent. One year I gave up being helpful. Mostly because I found that I was being an obnoxious twat waffle and saying, here, let me help. I was just trying to be helpful. It had become a toxic thing. Yeah, I touch my face when I'm stressed, okay? And my face itches really bad. Really bad. Okay, my face itches bad enough that I sprayed a whole bunch of this on my face about a half hour ago. Let it soak in and then wiped off the sticky, and my face still itches. Mostly because it's a nerve-ending itch and not a physical itch, and that spray did absolutely nothing for it, which is what I wanted to prove to myself. We'll get to that later. Lent. One year I gave up abstinence for Lent. We won't go into that because the hubby will get annoyed at me. I don't have my teeth in. I gave up talking for Lent one year. That was a very fun year. I could see doing that again sometime, but we're moving this month and it's not possible. So this year, for Lent, I'm trying to decide what I want to give up. And the purpose of Lent, the purpose of giving up, the reason why most people, go vegetarian for Lent or give up coffee for Lent, the theory behind it is you're supposed to give up something that you do every day, that when you realize you're not doing it, you have an immediate thought that, oh, I gave that up for Lent, and you have a positive thought about religion. I'm not going to go into details of which religion and what flavor of Christianity and all that. Different people do it for different reasons on that. I'm Coptic. I'm non-practicing Coptic. I'm Jack Mormon. I'm a lot of things. I like Lent to refocus because it takes a month and a half to 2 months to develop a new habit. So if I found myself babbling all the time to fill the silence, then giving up talking for a month and a half allowed me to see where the urges were happening. And it really helped me to not babble so much. This year, I don't know what I'm going to give up. I'm thinking about it, I'm working my way through it, and I haven't figured it out yet. So make suggestions on what annoying habit of mine, what toxic behavior of mine I should give up for Lent, because that's what I usually try to give up, is annoying and toxic. Coffee's off limits because I need the caffeine to keep my lungs open. 3 different years I gave up caffeine for Lent, and 3 different years I had pneumonia before Easter. Not happening again. But anything else you can think of that I might need to give up? Yeah. So that's Lent coming up. The next subject is ignoring medical advice and diagnoses, and I'm going to take it from a different angle and then come back. Met somebody one time who had eyes that were bulgy. We became friends, we talked, we chatted, and I asked, so what are you doing for your glaucoma? I don't have glaucoma. You obviously, and at a glance, have glaucoma. No, what are you talking about? Your eyes. Oh, that's just a family thing. So glaucoma runs in the family. No, nobody's diagnosed with glaucoma. I don't know what you're talking about. You don't need glasses, do you? No. So you've never been to an eye doctor, have you? Why would I go to an eye doctor? For your glaucoma. That particular person rebuffed. We were friends, so it wasn't me interacting with a stranger about it. Rebuffed over and over and over and over and over again. And then one day, oh my God, I had this minor stroke. Yes, because you got high blood pressure with glaucoma. Nobody said anything about glaucoma. I don't know why you keep go to an eye doctor. By the time he went to an eye doctor, he had vision damage and all kinds of shit that could have been taken care of in advance, and he died at 37 from untreated high blood pressure. Okay, I get resentful because this is somebody I knew for 15 years, now about 10 years, that had a treatable medical condition that refused to accept that they had a medical condition because I'm not a valid source to them, and they didn't bother asking their doctor. Because they were healthy enough that they only went to the doctor every 2 to 3 years when they had to for a physical, and it never came up because they never mentioned it. Because the way American medicine works, you could go into the doctor's office with an obviously deformed wrist, okay? Obviously deformed wrist. And if you don't mention it, they're going to assume it's always been that way, and they're not going to do anything about it. They're not even going to mention it because they don't want to make you feel self-conscious. So if you go in with a shoulder problem, they're not going to ask about the wrist. Then you come back and say, see, my wrist is fine. No, your wrist isn't fine. Had somebody else I knew. They're on my Facebook feed. They're not watching my Facebook feed, so I don't care. They're not watching these videos. They're missing a bone right here. It's a common birth defect, okay? But the result is, you know the look? Okay? People go through their entire life with that sunken in spot right there that makes their nose upturned and their lips come out. And the impolite phrase is pig face. It's a really impolite face, but that's what 5-year-olds would call them. Okay? It's a bone. It's missing. It's a birth defect. There is a silicone spacer. It's outpatient. They make a slit in here, they slide it in, and 99% of people get immediate relief. Their nose comes forward, their lips settle, their teeth are better because it's fixed, or it's at least patched. So I'd known him for about 2 years, and I was like, so how come you didn't get the surgery? And he's like, what surgery? And I was like, there's a surgery to fix that. Well, why does it need to be fixed? Because it's a birth defect? My doctor would have told me that. Your doctor told your parents. So he's never had it done. And he apparently has never talked to his doctor about it, or if he has, he's decided he prefers to look that way because that's his visual self-image. Okay, fine. It's a birth defect. It's fixable. It's like saying my kid has a hair lip and I'm not getting it fixed. And yes, there is a better term for that. I use bad terms. I use old terms. I'm trying. I'm working on it. A lot of times I will interact with people who have a diagnosis and they're not doing anything about it because they're generally healthy. And then I have my friends who are unhealthy, chronically ill, who have a diagnosis and don't see the severity of it because there's something more emergent. There's something more immediate. For me, I had a bad head injury. My ears popped. I had a bad head injury when I was about 9 years old, right here. Okay. 3rd grade, 4th grade. So maybe older than 9. Anyway, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis at 11. I remember that doctor's appointment. I had been in pain for weeks, if not months. Everything hurt. Standing up hurt. My legs hurt. I was getting called lazy and a hypochondriac. And my mom took me to the doctor, and the doctor looked me over, and it was like 5 minutes of poke, poke, press, press, look, look. And I know what swollen joints look as a medical person now, but it surprised me as a kid that he could tell just by looking. It's like, this looks like rheumatoid arthritis. You need to take her to a specialist in Seattle. My mom goes, she's faking. Just give her something for the pain. Now, first of all, she's faking. Give her something for the pain. We went through a lot of doctors as a kid. We went through a lot of doctors. Mind you, a year before that, I fell in a mud puddle. We were swinging from maple tree limbs across this gulchy thing in the alley. The gulchy thing was a giant mud puddle in the alley that when it dried up was deep ruts. Anyway, The branch broke. I fell. I hurt my hip. I went in. I was like, I hurt my hip. Wah. My mom yelled at me, told me to go get cleaned up. So I took a hot bath. There was a big, huge scabby spot on my hip. I tried to show her. She didn't want to see. Put a Band-Aid on it. So I put some gauze on it. Blah, 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 blah. Flash forward to being 19 years of age and getting an x-ray on that hip and finding an old break and a piece of gravel. Piece of gravel about, do I have something the right, I can make something the right size. Piece of gravel about that big, okay? Oops, wrong way. About that big embedded in my hip. I'm a hypochondriac. That was the family's opinion of me as a kid. She's a hypochondriac. Rheumatoid arthritis at 11. My mother's answer to that was to take me to the pharmacy and ask for the most potent over-the-counter arthritis pills. And he gave her a bottle this big, 1,000 count, of 2,000 milligram aspirins, because they used to do that. They were horse pills. I'd been reading Katie Woodlawn, and in that book, her mother at one point grinds up some larger pills and packs them with butter and makes smaller pills for her to take. And I actually did that with those aspirins for 3 years. When I was 13, the doctor told my mom I probably had Ehlers-Danlos because my knee and my hip kept dislocating during basketball. God, I hated basketball. I spent, until my mother died when I was 14, every month at the doctor's with something wrong, and every month being told I was a hypochondriac and making it up. Blinding migraines at 13. Pass out, puking, blinding migraines. Wasn't allowed to take the medication that was prescribed. That kind of shit. When I was 19, right as the husband and I were starting to date, I went in to a doctor and said, find everything that's wrong with me. And one of the first things Dr. Peterson found was bone spurs on the head injury that were causing, basically every time I turned my head I was giving myself a concussion. They went in here and they lasered them out or picked them out. Okay. They found the hip. They found the back injury. They found a hairline fracture on the femur. That's a scary thing. They found a lot of shit wrong. And towards the end, he diagnosed me with MS. He said, you have MS. This is pretty obvious from the lesions on your spine and on your head, on your brain. But I didn't have any of the symptoms. I didn't have that many of the problems. You know, I had the hip would dislocate and the knee would dislocate and the muscle weakness there, but for the most part I didn't have any problems. And 5 years later, when I had insurance again and we went to group health, her name started with a B. She was a physician's assistant. And she decided that it was the head injury and anemia causing all the problems. And there's no way I had MS. I'm too healthy. We were hiking regularly and all kinds of stuff. And she sent me to a neurologist, and she sent me to a shrink, and they put me on Tegretol, and the Tegretol promptly killed my bone marrow, the majority of it. So any anemias I had became really bad anemias. The neurologist said, yeah, you have all the signs of MS, but you also have a B12 deficiency, and you have a head injury right where these white spots are, and you have spinal injuries right where the lesions are, and I can't diagnose MS at this time. Should you start having, and he gave me a list of symptoms that I promptly blew off. In the meantime, the Dr. Farmer was the shrink I was seeing, and she's like, you're not bipolar. This is not bipolar. And the end diagnosis was epilepsy. I have seizures, micro seizures all the time, and anemias. And I lived with that, and we went to Pennsylvania, and Dr. Zawissa, I think is his name, diagnosed the Meniere's because I was having all kinds of balance problems. Now, mind you, at that point, I would have a 3-week period of time of stroke-like symptoms because this arm would just not be functional. And this is the reattached arm. But it would go completely dead and not be functional. And my feet would, not the big toe and not the pinky toe, but the other 3 toes on my right hand on my right foot would go numb. Just the toes. Okay? We moved from New Philly to Allentown, and the doctor we had there was this really nice Pakistani dude. Really nice. And I'm like, what about my feet? It's just a weird thing. It's pins and needles for 3 weeks. And he'd be like, oh, that's neuropathy. I'm like, okay, what's causing it? Well, take some B6. Yeah, but what's causing it? Never got diagnosed. A lot of other health things happened in Pennsylvania. I'm not even going to go into. I had the cardiac ish and all kinds of stuff. The coal dust killed my lungs. Had a whole bunch of miscarriages, blah, 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 blah. Moved back to Washington to the tribal clinic. And when I went into the tribal clinic, the very first thing... Dr. Charles? Charles is either his first or his last name. I don't remember, old dude. Anyway, at the clinic... He was going over everything else, and we were dealing with a minor cancer. And he put his hand on my knee, and my knees vibrate. If you put your hand on my knees, I vibrate. Okay? I've had people that I have sex with make jokes that I have a built-in vibrator because my body vibrates. And he put his hand on my knee, and he's like, how long have you been doing that? And I was like, my whole life. He goes, oh, has anybody talked to you about MS? Like, yeah, when I was 19. He's like, okay, well, we'll get back to that. And we dealt with the cancer. Then I didn't have that insurance for 5 years, and when I came back to that insurance, to that clinic again, that whole file was gone. They don't keep them. And I'm like, he thought, and they're like, nah, we're not seeing that. Now the second round through that clinic, they thought I had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and Alzheimer's. That's how bad my symptoms were, and they decided that, I should just go home and learn how to knit while I wait to die, and put me on palliative care only. So that was 4 years wasted there. Then Lorianne drugged me to the free clinic in Lakewood, and the doctor there was like, holy shit, you got this wrong, this wrong, this wrong, this wrong, this wrong, this wrong, and she just, it was the old guy first, the old doctor first, just went to town with, all of this is wrong, you need a referral to here, and you need a referral to here, and you need a referral to here, and and the insurance refused all of them. So then I went to the poor clinic, the pay-as-what-you-can clinic, and she went, well, I think it's celiac. I'm like, okay, that lines up with problems I've had. I've got rheumatoid arthritis. I'm not, saying I don't. And she's like, okay, well, let's do this test. Oh, hey, you have celiac. Okay. And you're severely anemic, which is probably the celiac. Well, it's also the bone marrow. And this, that, and the other thing. So I went off of wheat, off of gluten. And then we went to the Caymans and almost died. That was fun. And then we moved to Hawaii. And within days of moving to Hawaii, I started having some really serious health problems, which we tried to hide from people online. Yeah, I'm going to go over on this video. We tried to hide, and we tried to hide, and we tried to hide. And then we had to admit that there were serious health problems going on. The first thing I noticed, third day in Hawaii, well, the husband noticed sooner because the second day in Hawaii he says I was hysterical. My memory is I was not that hysterical, but I'll give it to him because his autism is such that he's hypersensitive to other people's emotions. My autism is such that I have a hard time seeing other people's emotions. It's a bad combo. My feet were wet on the third day. They weren't wet. They just felt wet. My feet feel wet right now. Okay? The fronts of my shins have always picked up this wet sensation. Like, there's a cold breeze on water on your skin sensation. That's the fronts of my shins. Anyway, it went downhill quickly. I was living on energy drinks and masking symptoms, and most of them were just annoying. Okay? The face is far more slagged now than it was before Hawaii. This hasn't come back. Okay? This needs to come back. Every now and then, it'll look like it's trying to, but it's like a permanent case of Bell's palsy. Okay? This eye is blurry. It's been blurry since Hawaii. Okay? Mind you, this eye is got problems anyway, but it's been worse. Then, when the eye started doing the sparkly shit in Hawaii, it got scary. The scars started keloiding in Hawaii. Now, I'm willing to concede that it's possible that the scars were keloiding in Hawaii because I was scratching without thinking. Okay? Because everything else going on, y'all see I touch constantly. I can't not touch. It itches. So it's possible I was aggravating them. I don't know. I really don't know. I went to one doctor in Hawaii, and that was an eye doctor because that's all we could afford. And his comment was, it's the sulfites, go home. Go back to the mainland. It's like, I want Hawaii to be my home. I want to stay. Anyway, came back to Portland and promptly got severely depressed. One of the worst depressions I've had my entire life. Started mall walking, got up to 5 miles a day, and then crashed. Took 3 months to get over that, started mall walking again, moved here, continued walking with the husband 3 to 5 miles a day, and then crashed. These crashes take it feels like I'm walking through water. It's a strain to stand up. Crashed. So, this last week, the hubby had a health scare. The hubby thought that he was going to have severe life-changing surgery, and turns out he didn't need it because there was a mimic and everybody's relieved. Mind you, he still has a wound he has to pack the dressing on every day, and I do not give him enough sympathy. I really don't. I need to give him more sympathy. I'm making beef with broccoli soup for dinner tonight, so maybe that'll be sympathy for him. It's one of the few ways I know to show sympathy. I have a lousy bedside manner, I admit it. Anyway, through that was a comment made by a medical person. Have you thought about MS? So, I do not have a doctor's appointment scheduled yet for the follow-up. I have a game plan for the doctor's appointment scheduling the doctor's appointment for a follow-up. But right now we're moving. We don't have a place to move to yet. We have 3.5 weeks. It's getting pretty close. I'm stressing out. Stress is not good if you have MS. So if this is MS, it's not good. But we're moving. And I can barely get out of the chair to stand up because my lower back is not working again. I have to lift myself up to stand right now. And that's something that before the celiac diagnosis had been in place for about 3 years, 2.5 years, and then went away when I dropped off of gluten and has now come back. It hurts to stand, and the body can't support my weight in standing, so I'm having to lift with my arms. And that's scary. It's been scary in the past. So am I ignoring medical advice? No. Did I deny the diagnosis? Ignore the diagnosis? I tend to take what doctors say at face value. If a doctor tells me it's something, I'm like, okay, let's go with that. Because it's easy. Because they have the training and I'm 30 years out. Because I never trusted my skills before to begin with. Whatever. In the meantime, my face itches. My feet feel wet. And my back doesn't work. So, in April or May, I will be going in and requesting a full evaluation for multiple sclerosis. And if the lesions are still on the brain, and if the lesions are still on the spinal column as they were when I was younger, then I'm going to have to accept that diagnosis because I've gone 6 months at a time with a foot that doesn't work, and 6 months at a time with a leg that won't support my weight, and 6 months at a time with a hand that's completely dead. And my bladder doesn't work sometimes. And it's one of the few diagnoses that takes into account, okay, I have rheumatoid arthritis, yes. I have bad anemias, yes. Anemias can cause lesions, yes. It could be a mimic. But if you take the Ehlers-Danlos and the Meniere's and a few of the other odds and ends that have been thrown in over the years, and you label all of those symptoms as MS, That with rheumatoid arthritis and anemia, and it all fits. I'm tired. When somebody asks if you have a medical condition and you say no, realize there's a reason they may have thought. Realize you might want to talk to your doctor about it. Realize sometimes you just need a new doctor. I got nothing on that. The two worst doctors I ever had were Group Health and the Indian Clinic. And those two doctors, by devaluing and blowing off, lost years of my life. You know? Pennsylvania, we just didn't have insurance. Dr. Zwissa was a good doctor, but we didn't have insurance, which means he was operating on what he could see without testing. Yeah, chronic vertigo. I'm babbling. It's been 25 minutes. I may not post this. We'll see. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.